Jenna from scribblinggrace.com. Today I'm doing a Bible journaling with me video on Job 34, verse 31 through 32. And the main focus on my page here is going to be the lettering. So I'm going to be doing some watercolor calligraphy today. I did a tutorial on this years ago, a more in-depth watercolor calligraphy tutorial specifically, which is a great one to check out. And I'll put that link as well as all the links to the supplies that I'm using in the blog post that goes along with this video at Watercolor Lettering Journaling. Kind of a long one, but I'll put the link in the description below so you can easily find that. But I did that tutorial a while ago, and today I thought I would just kind of touch on it again. Won't be as in-depth, but it's a really fun thing to do in your journaling Bible once you get the hang of it. This watercolor lettering can take some practice. It's a little bit more difficult than, say, using a brush pen, but the technique is still exactly the same. Any type of calligraphy is the same idea, where when you're going upward, you apply very little pressure and just use the tip of your paintbrush or your pen. And when you're going downward, you apply pressure and thicken up those down strokes. So it's a simple concept. It can just take some practice. So here I'm going. You can see I'm going up, so I'm applying very little pressure. And then when I go down, I apply pressure to my paintbrush to create a thicker stroke. It's obviously not perfect this first go around. I always find like the first letter, first word is kind of the hardest for me to do. And then once I get used to it, it becomes a little bit easier. So you might want to practice a little bit beforehand before going into your Bible. But you can see here, I'm just taking that paintbrush and just fixing it up and making it a little bit straighter. So don't worry if you don't get it perfect the first go round. You can always go back over it and try to fix it up. So one thing I did learn here, I'm using this yellow paintbrush, which was old and it was kind of falling apart. You'll see me kind of struggle. Here we go, trying to pick the little hairs that were coming apart from it. I'm kind of known for using super cheap paintbrushes out of the value packs, which I'm all for, but I also take terrible care of them, so they don't last me all that long. But because I take such terrible care of them, I don't want to invest in some higher quality brushes. So the brush that you use can kind of make a difference. You'll see here, I'm going to switch out my brush. So I was just struggling with that yellow one, switched to a little bit newer of a paintbrush, and I had a much easier time. So that's something to note, is that you might want to just pick out a couple small round paintbrushes that you have and test them out beforehand and see which one you find to be the easiest to work with. I think it can kind of be personal preference. Some like some with more a rounded tip, and some like more with a round brush with more of a pointed tip. I personally kind of like the pointed tip. I find it gives me a little bit thinner upstrokes, but again, try it out for yourself and see which brush works best for you. One of the reasons why I love the value packs is that they come with different sizes and things, so then you can test out what size you like the most as well. So here I am. Let's go back to the lettering. One of the hardest things about watercolor lettering is figuring out the amount of water to use, because you want to use enough water that you can easily transfer the paint onto the paintbrush and then onto the page. But you also don't want so much water that when you touch the brush down onto the page, it creates a big blob. Or you don't want your upstrokes to be so thick, because when you have more water, it flows a lot easier. And so you won't get as thin of upstrokes, or your downstrokes might get a little too thick or too blobby. So that's something to just practice. It's something I can't necessarily really show you. It really just has to do with practicing and trial and error. Another thing is that, of course, the whole point of doing brush calligraphy is that you're able to do it all in one swoop. So you do your upstroke and then straight down into your downstroke. But sometimes your letters just don't work out perfectly that first time around. And the great thing about lettering is that you don't have to do it perfect the first time around. So if your letter looks a little bit wonky, you can always go back over it. Just use that tip of your paintbrush and just thicken up the downstroke as you need to, or clean up a line that may be a little bit wobbly. So don't worry too much about making that perfect, applying the perfect pressure for the upstroke and the downstroke. Just, you know, go for it and, keep going for it. And again, it really, with lettering, it really just takes practice. The style that I'm doing here is what I call bounce calligraphy, and I have a tutorial all on how to do that. The thing about watercolor calligraphy is that I do find it's a lot, or it's a bit harder than just brush pen calligraphy, because you do have the extra factor of trying to figure out how much water to use and using the watercolor, and it's a little bit trickier using a paintbrush than it is using a brush pen. So I do recommend trying to learn calligraphy first by faux calligraphy, where you just use a normal ballpoint pen or whatever marker you want to use to figure out the upstrokes and downstrokes. That's your first starting point. Then once you have that down, go into brush calligraphy using a brush pen. And brush pens are markers that have a flexible tip, so you can create upstrokes and downstrokes easily with a brush pen. My favorite brush pen is the Tombow Funosuke brush pen, which you'll see me using in pretty much all of my Bible journaling videos. And then once you're comfortable with brush pen calligraphy, you can move on to watercolor calligraphy or brush calligraphy. You don't have to use just watercolor either. You can also do the calligraphy like this with acrylic paints, just thin them down a little bit to make it a little bit easier. So I feel like I'm not teaching enough about the actual technique, but it really, I feel like I have so much more time to go into much more detail in the other lettering tutorials that I have. So definitely check those out. Again, they'll be linked in the blog post that goes along with this video at scribblinggrace.com/watercolor lettering journaling. All right, so now that I have finished my lettering, I'm going to dry this with my little heat pen and then add in some roses, for some kind of quick little sketchy-like roses, and some leaves to surround my lettering and kind of finish off my page. So to do my little roses, I'm really just kind of taking my paintbrush in just small little C shapes, going around in a circly shape. Again, I did this really fast. This right here is real time. So I did this pretty quickly, just kind of doing these quick little rose-like shapes. I wanted it to be kind of organic looking. So not a super duper perfect rose here, but you get the idea that there's some kind of flower. And then especially once I add the leaves. So I'm using the yellow right now, and then I'll add in some orangey and pink colors to make it a little bit brighter. And so again, the verse that I'm working on is Job 34, verse 31 and 32, which says, "For has anyone said to God, I have borne punishment, I will not offend anymore. Teach me what I do not see. If I have done iniquity, I will do it no more." So I thought that was a pretty cool verse when I stumbled upon that. In Job. So here I am adding the orange, just a little bit of something to make the flowers pop a little bit more than the yellow was. When I'm getting big blobs of watercolor where I don't want it, I just take my piece of paper towel and dab it up before it's dry. And then I'm just adding a little bit of that pink, a dark pink color from, again, my Kuretake Gamstampi watercolor set. I love this watercolor set so much. I get asked a lot about watercolors bleeding through. Certain brands, some watercolors do bleed through. I have not personally had any bleed through issues with this Kuretake Gamstampi watercolor set. So that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. It also comes with so many premix colors. I have the 48 color set, but they have smaller sets like 12 and 18 and 24 and 36 that you can get as well, that are a little bit cheaper than the one that I have. But I just love this watercolor set so much. So again, the links to the supplies that I use will be in the blog post, and I'll put that link in the description below. So here I am just adding some little leaf shapes. I have so many tutorials on leaves and flowers, so check those out to get a little more in depth on how exactly I'm creating the shapes. Again, with these roses and leaves, I was trying to just be really quick and uh, not focus too much on them because I just wanted them to look a little whimsical, a little sketch-like, not super duper perfect. I'm not focusing too much on the shapes because, again, my main focus here on this page was the lettering. So I'm just filling in filling in that white space with the leaves. Wherever I feel like there's too much open space, I'll kind of add a leaf there. And um, I like to work with pairs of 2 leaves. So you'll see here, I'm almost always doing 2 leaves next to each other. I just find that it looks best to work in pairs. I sometimes will do 3 leaves as well in a group, 2 or 3. I find just fills it up the best. I think it looks the best to the eye. And now I decided to add in some little dots. So I just took that pink color, the dark pink, one of my favorite colors, and just adding dots in groups of 2s and 3s all around to fill in those, again, those white spaces. Wherever I feel like there's too much empty space, I just fill in with a little dot, which this part would be totally optional. I mean, it's all totally optional. You can always change. I hope by sharing these pages, it's really just to inspire you to create your own thing. So I hope that you'll give this a shot. But of course, make it your own. You can use totally different colors. You can totally do different things, different flowers, do whatever you want. You don't have to add little dots. You can add little dots. You can do different shapes entirely. Maybe add little crosses. I hope that it inspires you to have some fun, have fun with it. So, again, this type of page just takes a little bit of practice, but it is totally doable and it's so much fun. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and that it provided some inspiration for you. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And be sure to check out that blog post where I'll put the links to all the supplies that I used and other links to other helpful tutorials on lettering and watercolor stuff. That'll all be in the blog post that goes along with this video at scribblinggrace.com/watercolor lettering journaling. And it's linked in the description below. So here's the back side of the page. You can see there's no bleed through. There is that ghosting, which is just that shadow from the dark lettering. But that will be easily, you won't notice that once there's something on the other side of the page. So that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Much love and many blessings.